How's
Here
it going?
is the man. So I knew you were going to wear that shirt. So I wore this shirt,
uh, I
and
s-
we're
that I'm a little jealous because yeah, I got shortchanged. He only played about 4 songs, I think, or so. But then I did get to see Bob Dylan, so
yeah.
that
Well,
was
listen.
crazy.
Let's quickly chat about this. This. How many times have you been to Farm Aid?
This was my seventh.
Seventh time. That's
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah, and I figured it out. I think it was my 17th time seeing Neil. If I had those farm aides in,
Nice, nice. Well, listen. The
yeah,
That's
I've made it my mission now to go and see him, and I don't know how. I guess Farm Aid came out as soon after I went to San Diego. I think they announced
yeah,
Farm Aid, and I go, oh, I would have loved to see him there because you can see a bunch of other people there. But do keep in touch with me, David, the next time you know that
yeah, yeah,
that
for sure.
Neil's playing.
Well, I still
But
hope it was one of those things after Jimmy Buffett passed, a month or so ago. You
yeah,
never know. And I figured if I could just see him one more time, and because I don't know if he's going to tour, you don't know, right? Because he took that time off during COVID. He was a little careful. He's
yeah,
only been doing a few select shows. So whether he will do a full tour and play Massey Hall again, who knows, right? So
yeah. And I think it was in North Carolina, right? Farm Aid.
no, this year was in Indianapolis.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
So
so it wasn't too bad, but
that's
six
quite a
hours.
trek for him. That's quite a trek for him because
Yeah,
he did
well,
that West Coast
essentially
tour.
he played the Roxy 50th anniversary with Crazy Horse like a couple nights before. Yeah,
That would have been something. That would have. Anyways, let's invite Gregg into this conversation.
yeah. How are you doing, Greg?
good, sir. Yourself?
Yeah, good.
Good.
First
Good to
off,
see you.
Oh, I love the shirt, Adrian Sutherland. Yeah,
yeah.
It's a setup for one of my questions, buddy. Set up for
yeah.
one
All
of my
right, there
questions.
you go. First off, congrats on the book.
Yeah,
101
thanks.
Yeah.
fascinating Canadian music facts. Congrats on this. Um, here's a question I have for you. Um, what's your favorite fact that didn't end up in this book?
Of course, you asked me something right off the top that you're going to stump me, but I mean, really, I don't know if I can think of one right off the top of my head. It's more the fact that there is probably another 101, 201, 1001, right? Like initially I thought it'd be hard to come up with
Yeah,
101. But then you start thinking about it and yeah, it's amazing the richness of music and history we have in this country, right? And it's so diverse too, for the most part. And that's one thing I tried to do in this book. And that's where, yeah, probably I left stuff out that, or maybe facts or things that I really, loved or thought of, but it was in that effort to try and have more balance, both regionally,
hmm
um, eras, diversity in terms of, the artist chosen. So that probably would be it more. I mean, I'm sure I'll think of it at some point, one of the ones I left out, but because I figured that it'd be easier. I think I wrote about 108 or 9 or 10, and then figured it'd be easier to cut some
cut
at
back.
the end,
Sure.
and the publisher kind of could help with that. Say, oh, you've already got too many of this, or I think this one works better, and
Oh,
that's where the
interesting.
editor really helps with the book too. Yeah.
Yeah. So flipping that on its head, that question, because I am sure you have had many people come up to you afterwards and go, "You didn't include this," or "Oh, I thought of this," or this story. Do you have one that you've learned since that you're looking forward to for the next book?
Mhm. Well, talking to Joel Rubinoff for the record recently, he shared an interesting story about David Clayton Thomas, who I did
hmm
feature in the book here, about his spinning wheel and how that's kind of still paying his rent so many years later. This the life of a song, right? But I guess he told a story that someone had told him about playing this small hotel in the Kitchener Waterloo area, and Basically, it was at a time, I guess, when he wasn't as, it must have been right before that, kind of smash. And it was in
Yeah.
the kind of mid 60s there. And he basically had to climb up on a ladder and put up his own name on the marquee and everything, I guess, at this place. So, I thought that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
I recently chatted with, what's his name, Mo Berg for Pursuit of Happiness.
Yeah.
And I mean, just how that whole album, Love Junk, and the song came about. I mean, I touch on it in the book too, about the power of much music. I mean, the
Yeah.
documentary, I haven't had a chance to see. I'm sure you guys probably have, because it seemed everyone was at that
The premiere on Friday.
night.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what I mentioned in the book. It was that idea that much music, it gave so much success to so many bands that they might have not been heard on the radio or found success otherwise. And that was a great example with Mo Bergen saying, you guys probably remember that video for an adult now,
For sure.
just shot, low budget and shot in and around
Queen
Toronto,
Street, right
Queen
outside
Street,
the Bamboo. Yep.
Young Street. And he said, basically, it was a lot of luck. They just decided, let's film this video. Kind of the same idea as if let's just go grab a pizza. Like it was just like on a whim. They do the video, drop it off at Much Music, and he thought maybe the Outer Limits or one of these shows will play it. But next thing you know, it's in regular rotation, and that single is huge, and people are going into Sam the Record Man in places and asking for the single, and they don't even have a single. So then they had to get singles, like a single made, and right. Those stories are so cool, and that's what I tell people, that even it's like this book and my writing and third book now, who would have thought, but a lot of it's hard work for sure, but there's always a bit of luck involved in that right place, right time for sure. But you got to be out there and put yourself in that place for some of those, that kind of magic and fortune moment to happen. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there I know fact number 99 is a Neil Young fact. I think it's about trains. But I'm wondering, like, do you have a favorite fact? Maybe a fact that, I don't know if it's your favorite, or one that you discovered that sort of said, wow, okay, this is amazing.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I mean, again, there are so many that obviously that's why it's called fascinating, because I hope that all of them are kind of fascinating, right?
Yeah.
The first one in the book, actually, I mean, to me, that was a great story, that Lyndon Manzer, a Canadian luthier, for those who don't know, a luthier is someone who, makes guitars and builds guitars. And that was a really cool story. I mean, I was chatting with her for another piece I was doing about this guitar that she had put together for the Ukraine, and got all these, famous musicians to sign it and pose with it, and, the journey of that guitar. And I said, well, you got any other kind of fun stories or something I might be able to use? And she shared this story of, like, she hadn't even started her own business yet. And she was traveling out to California with some friends, and she stayed in the Bay Area at this friend's place. And it just so happened these friends were living on the property where Santana lived. And so, one thing leads to another. She gets to meet Santana, and then, she heads back off to do her apprenticeship, in Vancouver, where she's learning to become a luthier. And these friends phone her up and say, hey, we'd love if you could make a guitar for us that we can give to Santana for Christmas. And she's like, well, yeah, okay. And she did all this research to find out, what he was into and what he liked and everything, and crafted this guitar and sent it off to them. And next thing you know, Santana's interviewed by, a guitar magazine, and drops her name saying, I got this great new guitar that was made by, Linda Manzer. And she said, that one line or one sentence in that magazine kind of, set my career off. Right. And another example of, who knows, like, she just happened to be, and
That's a great story.
Those are the stories. Yeah, those are the stories I always find really cool. Right? It's
Yeah.
to show, because a lot of people think, oh, these things happen, like, but there is a lot of that. You know, there's a lot to it, is what I mean, and a lot of things have to happen for, sometimes the success to happen too. So
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because you talk about the facts that surprised you, and one of the ones that I didn't know, as fact 79, also includes a luthier, is Colin Cripps, who I've known just like through business and through friends for a
Yeah.
number of years, and I did
mm-hmm,
not know the story about the Maple Leaf Forever tree, and that like
mm-hmm.
I remember it going down. I remember them trying to reuse it, but I didn't realize if you can share what Colin and was it Dan Fox did with that, or Dave Fox, rather,
Yeah,
Dave Fox.
yeah, that was a number of years back. A really cool story that yeah, basically the Maple Leaf Forever was kind of known as, before we had our national anthem. It was kind of like Canada's unofficial national anthem. And of course, is it Alexander Muir? I think I should know that, who wrote the song.
Hmm.
But the important thing here, and the cool fact, is basically there was a tree that was kind of in the east end of Toronto, and it was the tree that inspired him to write the song. So it had the plaque and whatever, and people knew about it. And in one of those brutal storms a few years ago, as we all know, Mother Nature is the boss, and this tree was damaged and felled. And one example where politicians in the city actually were pretty smart and came up with a great idea that, hey, let's try and preserve and save this important piece of Canadian history. And they had all these people submit projects and ideas for what they could do with the wood. And Colin Cripps, as you said, who's the guitarist for Blue Rodeo now, has been for a long time, and he came up with this great idea. Worked with a luthier friend of his, Dave Fox, and they designed this Maple Leaf Forever guitar. And yeah, pretty cool. They had lots of little touches of Canadiana in it, in how they crafted it. And the whole concept was that then this guitar would be given to a different player to use for kind of a year at a time. And
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Get shared around. Yeah, that's great. Karim, I don't know if you remember, but I took you to that park. We were going to dine alone. This is pre-pandemic for record store day.
Yeah, we passed
So
by someone's house,
it's
right?
it's that little park that's in behind, like it's sort of a hidden park in Leslieville, north of Eastern, south of Queen, in there. So yeah,
Yeah, I was thinking as you're talking, I think I've got a picture of
yeah,
the plaque.
yeah.
And I couldn't remember, was it the
Yeah, I took
tree
you
or
there to show you that. Yeah, yeah.
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 That is so true. That is so true. Um, you're going on tour with this book,
Yeah.
David.
Yeah.
Um, talk about that. Your Kitchener, which is home base for you.
Yeah.
I think next week.
Yeah, next Thursday, October 5th. So yeah, I'm excited to kick things off in my hometown, Kitchener-Waterloo, and at the main branch of the library. It's where I've had some of my other book launches for the Horseshoe. I had a great event there with
Mm-hmm.
Josh and Andy from the Skydiggers.
Nice.
But it's just such a fabulous library. I can't say enough about you know what they offer to the community. I mean, libraries have become such a gathering place,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been amazing at reinventing themselves in a day and age where it's nice to see when I go in there. There's still, of course, it's the shelves are filled with books, but that's not their only reason for existing anymore. They've realized that it's a place there. I mean, they have a coffee shop in there. They allow you to sit and have a coffee. And where I'm doing my event, it's in the basement. They have a beautiful theater. I've done a few vinyl listening parties there for people.
Nice.
Upstairs, they have a recording studio you can book. They loan instruments. So, it's just amazing, all the stuff they're doing. So I'm happy to be doing it there. And I have a local media personality that's been in the radio business for a while that will do a little Q&A, and a local musician kind of starting out the night. So I think
That's
it'll be,
cool.
yeah, great way to get kind of things going. And like I always do with any event, whatever city I'm in, I try and partner with the local indie bookstore, small business in town to provide the book. So in this case, it's Wordsworth that has been, right in Uptown Waterloo for, I'd say at least, 40 plus years. So.
Yeah, for sure. Now you're also taking this to the National Music Center
Yeah.
In Calgary, which I've yet to visit. My son went a few weeks ago when he was out there during the summer holidays. That's going to be an interesting place to have this book at. Anything special planned as well?
With that one, and things are still kind of in the works, but to me, it was kind of a natural when I thought of places where I could do something. I've been writing for their online content, which they call Amplify, for about
Mm-hmm.
at least 5 years now. I think I started a series for them called Record Rewind, where I look back at
Oh, nice.
seminal Canadian records on their kind of anniversaries. So it's such a cool space, and yeah, I think again we might try and get a local musician or someone involved. It's going to be a kind of family friendly afternoon programming that they do in their space there, and maybe again hopefully get someone from the local radio to come out and act as the host. So we'll see, but it's going to be a really fun event, and it's a perfect tie-in because for those that don't know the National Music Center, in many ways it's like our Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Now it has ongoing rotating exhibits, but it's also the permanent home to the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame. And this book has a lot of stories about some of those people that are in the hall, so it was a natural to take the book launch there for sure.
Nice.
Fantastic. Want to ask you about another chapter of the book. I could sit here. We could do it. We could do hours about the chapters in the book. But one of the ones, and it's funny because you were talking about the Much Doc, and we were there, and Karim had a chance to chat with a bunch of people on the red carpet. I was his camera operator. I never get the fun parts. I don't even operate. Like, come on. Anyway, no, seriously though. But Karim had a chance to talk to Denise Donlin. And one of the things, chapter 72, much comes out. I think in today's day and age, and it just pains me that we have to talk about this, but in today's day and age, it's just there's just so much shit going on in the world. I love the story Denise shared, and it harkened back to reading that chapter in your book. Can you share a bit about that story?
Yeah, David, before you go, David, I had asked her just so that you know.
Oh yeah.
I had asked her, "What's your favorite Much memory?"
Oh yeah.
And she said, the Much Comes Out initiative, being the first broadcaster in Canada to have a float at the Gay Pride Parade, and she didn't have to think about the answer. She knew right away that was her answer. And it just so happened that after I spoke with her, I was, continuing to go through your book. I came to that fact, and I go, "Oh my goodness, that's in the book as well." But yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, you basically reference it there. I mean, Denise Donlin, I mean, a real trailblazer herself. Rose in the ranks in the music industry, and much music for her. I mean, you can think about all the incredible things that she's done and people she's interviewed. And as you said, for her though, this is what she shared with me as well, that basically, back I'm trying to remember, I think it was late kind of 80s is when it happened. So it was Much Music wanted to have a float. One of her colleagues in the Toronto Gay Pride Parade, and you can think, like you said, Gregg. Unfortunately, at this time, there's still dissenting voices and people that art is open, and don't realize that love is love, right? And but back then, I mean, it was a huge thing for Much Music, a private broadcaster, to give the blessing and say, "Hey, yeah, we're all for this," and it showed that they were kind of ahead of things there, and it was an amazing moment, as Denise shared, that they had this crazy wild float, and a lot of the VJs were on it, and the dancers from Electric Circus, and it was just a big party atmosphere, and but it was just that fact that everyone, pretty much from the head down, they were like, yeah, we're for this, right? But Denise, I mean, she did say she got even a few threatening phone calls, and went, about people who heard about that they were doing this, and you can imagine, right? The people that just filled with hatred, and not it's unfortunate, but yeah, fantastic moment, and another one for Much Music that great thing they did, and that they were part of that, another moment in Canadian music history there, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's funny too, because it's like, if you all those people, it's like people that tell Tom Morello to stop being political, on Twitter. It's like, hey, keep your politics out of this, but it's like, think of all the music Much was playing back then, with like Parachute Club and Frankie Goes to Hollywood and Erasure, and like all these, they weren't hiding their sexuality. And right. You had all these rednecks listening to it going, hey, it's great tunes, not listening, not getting. And then I was like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah. No.
Wow. I was, as you're reading it, I see, which ones do I know, which ones don't I know? So as I'm reading the story about Tears Are Not Enough, I go, yeah, I know this. And it wasn't until the end where I go, what? He made Neil Young do 13 takes? I don't know if Neil Young has ever done 13 takes of anything.
Yeah.
He'll do it once or twice. If he has to do it a third time, he's angry. But 13 takes, I'm surprised he stayed there.
Well, yeah, that is a surprising piece of that story, right? I mean, but that, from everything I've read, I mean, I think David Foster, I mean, his reputation speaks for himself, and he's well respected and liked in the industry. But he even admits, he later kind of apologized, and was, because he was younger then, and he was he was a real taskmaster, and like most people, right? Neil Young is, you either love him or you don't, and a lot of it is his voice, right? And so for someone like Foster, who's worked, with Celine Dion and all these people with these real pure angelic voices, you can imagine him hearing Neil and thinking, oh, wait a second, this isn't on key, something's off here. But that was Neil. And finally, I guess he must have got it and said, yeah.
Fine, I'll do it your way. I'll do it your way. You do also say, David, so I have to ask you this about your next book. You do also say that you could have come up with 101 Neil Young interesting facts. And we know, there's been a number of books written about him. He's written a number of books himself. Is there a 101 fascinating Neil Young facts coming out sometime?
I know you'd love to get your hands on that one. And yes, I mean, I probably could write it, but I don't know. You never know. There's been so many. It's like, I was fortunate to be down at Farm Aid this past weekend, and as I mentioned before we went on the air, like surprise guest Bob Dylan, and that's the one I always floors me. You go to a bookstore or library, and you just see how many. It's like, how can there be another book on Dylan? But you never know. I mean, I think, as I mentioned, Neil is the one I've seen in concert more than anyone else. I've definitely read a lot of books about him, and I'm quite familiar with him. But I think that would be the challenge. What could I do or say or write that would be, new or interesting? And that is always the challenge as a writer, right? When you're writing about anything that has been done before, you got to bring some new perspective to it, for sure.
That's true. That is so true. Listen, off topic, I have to ask you this, and I can't remember the actual name. Maybe it was a year ago. The 50th anniversary of, was it 50th anniversary of Heart of Gold? No,
Yep.
Harvest. Yeah, did you see
Harvest.
that? Did you see that doc?
Um,
Was it Harvest? What was it? Oh,
yeah, it was the 50th
Harvest Time.
anniversary of
Harvest
Harvest.
Time. Wasn't it called
Yeah,
Harvest Time?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I went and watched it with my dad, and yeah, I enjoyed it. It was
Yeah, that was really, really interesting. I wasn't sure what to expect, but
I mean, it was cool that I mean, not surprising with Neil that he keeps everything. That there was even this old footage of, and because I wondered how can you make this whole film? I mean, obviously it was a little disjointed, and but that's his kind of style
that's
and
his
everything.
style. Yeah.
But the fact that there was like some of that behind the scenes of the recording in the barn, and that was I thought that was was neat after all this time to
Yeah.
see that footage emerge. But
Yeah. I took my wife and son to see that in Toronto, and I loved it. I was like floating after that. Anyways, let's get back to the podcast. Go
Okay,
ahead.
back to the podcast.
yeah,
Chapter 40.
yeah.
Lost heatwave tapes. And you
Hmm.
hear my dogs barking in the background.
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting to read that about the Kings, and in it, you talk about the fact that there were only, I think, 2 bands that agreed to have the recordings done, and just lately, Teenage Head has released their recording. So I thought that was really interesting. In this, but in the book, you focus on the Kings
Yeah.
recording, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was one again where it's like, okay, what's the fascinating fact here, or what story am I going to tell? And that's where I've been very fortunate working with Dundurn Press. I mean, they always assign a really good editor, and this time around was no different. And that was one area where they really helped. Was sometimes when I was maybe struggling a bit, or you always need that outside perspective of someone telling you, well, this is starting to sound too much like a bio, or it's not. What's that? Fascinating fact in there, and that's in this case though it was one where the Kings with their huge hit that finally got inducted in the Songwriters Hall of Fame,
that everybody knows the song, but very few people could name the act.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those ones, right? It's not one of those like 2 songs in one.
Yeah.
But I thought that is a story in itself that I think has been told. So in talking to the guys in the band, they came up with this story of Heatwave. And the Heatwave Festival in itself, I'll be honest, I didn't really know about it. I probably was 7 when this happened, right? Because it was in the early, I think around 80, 81. But so I thought that was a cool story in itself. So again, that could have been just the fact or something there. But then this was kind of that really the nugget that was there. It was about they basically, as you said, them and Teenage Head were the only ones that decided to sign and say, hey, you can videotape this. But then it was that like a lot of things you hear where somewhere along the line these tapes ended up on some shelf in some storage facility, whoever the video company was, and forgotten about. But this was a really had a happy ending where they were looking for these tapes because they knew Doug McClement, who has been recording for 40 plus years or more, probably close to 50 in his remote truck, and has all the stuff. He had done the audio part of that, and so they wanted to match up the video and get this to their fans. And yeah, they basically doing some detective work. Mr. Zero, who was the lead singer, he found out where it was, and the guy at this warehouse literally said, well, I was cleaning the shelf out the other day, and I went by, and that's one of the ones I saved, but he had been thrown out, so it could have ended up at a dump somewhere. But so pretty cool story.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I've seen some of and again, I'm a huge Teenage Head fan, so I've seen some of the video footage from then of them flying in or helicoptering in or whatever. And it's I don't know, really cool for a band that at the time was relative to the other bands playing Heatwave. I think like insane lineup.
Yeah, I mean, you had the Pretenders there, Elvis Costello, so there was all these big US bands, and yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get to wrapping things up, I do want to. I'm wearing the shirt. We have
yeah,
to talk about our friend,
yeah,
who's much like yourself, multiple guest on the show. Great story about Adrian Sutherland. Again, we talk about a lot of, I don't know if pivot's the right word, but because it's overused, but sort of, during COVID, people having to create a new normal in their life. And if you could just share a bit about that chapter. I don't have the number. I've been nailing numbers and I didn't write it in my notes.
yeah.
So
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. I mean, Adrian Sutherland, incredible uh, songwriter, artist from. I always forget the exact, name.
Atawakaskat.
Yeah, because I didn't want to say it incorrectly, but it's basically as far north as you can go, like north of, like you need to fly in this type of community, right, to
Yeah,
get there.
yeah.
Very remote, and Adrian still lives very much on the land, goes out
yeah.
and hunts, and gets the food for the winter and everything. And he played in a few rock bands, but COVID came along, and he'd been thinking about doing a solo record, and this was one of those examples where, I mean, you can, to use another cliche, like you said, pivot, that silver lining, that here he is, he's stuck at home, his tour with his band is not going to happen. And so, beyond having that extra family time, he thought, well, maybe I can use this time to create. But the only problem was he didn't have a studio, right? He was like, how am I going to put this record together without a studio? And pretty cool, using his imagination. And he remembered that he had this like old sea can that basically, the shipping containers, right? That like in Toronto, they used it to create that stack market. And
Yep.
Yep.
you've seen in recent years people reusing these things. I even saw someone build a house up near our cottage with one of these things. But so yeah, Adrian had this thing, and I think it was about 40 feet. It was pretty long, and it was just kind of sitting there. And he decided, yeah, I mean, he's going to retrofit it and make it in, to a little studio. And that's what he did. And he recorded his debut solo record right there. And then he worked remotely with Colin Linden, who lives in Nashville. And that's the amazing thing with technology, that he was able to send files and do stuff, and Colin could hook right in. And yeah, another really cool story of, like you said, someone who said, all right, this is the situation I'm in, how can I come up with some creative way to and solution to create some art. And yeah, I thought that was a really great story I wanted to include, for sure.
Yeah,
For
it is
sure,
a
for
great
sure. We had the
story.
pleasure of interviewing Adrian. It was either just before the hunt or just after the hunt, and I think he took his son out, or one of his sons, for the first time, and it was amazing because we had no idea. I think it was relative. Well, I don't know. Who knows when COVID went? It was relatively early, late, whatever. Anyway, but I do remember. We really, like, the three of us had no idea if we were going to be able to do it just from a technology perspective, because
Right.
he was streaming from his studio in the shipping
Yeah.
container, and it was like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was amazing. Well,
It
quite an
was.
honor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love talking to him. And listen, it wouldn't be a podcast that David would be on if we didn't tie in that last story with Neil Young. I think me personally, I discovered who Adrian was when he did that version of Heart of Gold.
Yeah, for
It
sure.
just blew me away. I think maybe my brother shared it with me, and I go, that is awesome. But yeah, David, thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining us today. We ask this question. Gregg asks this question to musicians that join us. Might as well ask you. You're a music lover. You're a connoisseur. What are you listening to these days? Old, new?
Yeah, that's always a tough question, because I try and always discover new music. I am on the Polaris, jury. So through that, it's been a great experience. It's really opened my ears to a lot more music and different genres and styles that I normally wouldn't. And I'm fortunate too that, you know, through my kids as well. You know, I have two teenagers and they both have quite different musical tastes, but you know, one band that you know, my son turned me on to, and I went and saw them in concert in Toronto at the concert hall a week or so ago, was Black Country New Road, and they just blew me away. It was so unique, so different. I mean, they kind of are a bit like the Canadian you know, band Godspeed New Emperor, but it just, you know, they got so much going on. They got violin, they have accordion, they have piano, drums, you know, saxophone, and you know, the music kind of goes to from a, you know, up to a crescendo and then quiets down, and so that was pretty awesome. But yeah, beyond that, I mean, I'll admit, I still go back to the classic rock. There's just something about it. I find when I'm in my car that's probably the station I listen to the most, Sirius XM, you know, the classic vinyl. And I don't know, there's something timeless about all those songs and that music. And but it, you know, I'm always trying to discover new music. And you know, I've got about probably 600 or 700 vinyl behind me here, so there's never a shortage of music to listen to, that's for sure.
The book is 101 Fascinating Canadian Music Facts, published by our friends at Dundurn Press. Go to your local bookstore, go to your library, go online, get a copy of this book. It is a great read. You don't have to start from the beginning to the end. Just pick it up at a random page and discover something new about Canadian music. And again, for those of you across the country, October 5th in Kitchener is that the main public library? You're going to be there?
Yeah, it's at 80 Queen Street.
October 13th in Sarnia, October 21st in Calgary at the National Music Center, and October 26th here in Toronto. Our guest has been David McPherson. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Always fun to chat.